I guess we can call this our Saturday of rest. We have done nothing but watch college football every Saturday from noon until 2-3 o'clock in the morning, every Saturday, going back to the final Saturday of August. Northwestern fans, you remember that Saturday in August. You won your only game this season, and you had to get yourself outside of the continental United States to Ireland to win that game against Nebraska. That was a long time ago, and 11 consecutive losses for Northwestern since then. But just making the point that since August, whatever date, that final Saturday in August, it has been nonstop college football every weekend, every Saturday until now. We can take a breather. We can take a respite. But we're still here talking college football. Yes, we've got Army-Navy coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we wanted to properly pay our honor and respect to the sacrifice, to the service of our men and women in service. Army, Navy, it's unlike any other rivalry in college football. It is separate and distinct and unique and special. It's in a different category. So let the debate ensue about Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, the Civil War, the Liberty Bell, all those rivalries, Georgia, Georgia Tech, South Carolina, Clemson. Go to any part of the country. I have great respect and love all the college football rivalries. This one is truly different. We watch NFL players, future NFL players, each and every weekend. They have an intent to, many of them go to class and earn a degree. Many of them are just focused strictly on the NFL, and they're basically pre-NFL players that we are watching each and every weekend. Today, we are watching those with a much higher calling and where football is third, fourth, seventh on the priority list, and they're still able. This always fascinates me. It always brings me to a place of great admiration that despite all of the demands on these football players at Air Force, Army, Navy, that despite all those demands on them, where football is way down the list of their priorities, not that they don't work, lift weights, they have to do all those things or they couldn't compete at this level, that despite that being a lack of priority compared to their studies, compared to their military training, that they still go out there and compete with the best teams of the country. Sometimes they get blown out, but typically they show up and compete admirably. That's astounding when you really let that sink in. So our honor and respect and admiration go out to the men and women in service as we prepare for the 3 p.m. kickoff, Army, Navy. So whatever's on your mind, we will take our first call concerning college football, whether that's the bowl games, the transfer portal. National Signing Day is coming up on December 21st. That's only 11 days away. Whatever's on your mind. And I was just taking a peek after an Oregon record with our guy, Ryan Winter from Sports Staff 503, of this crumbling number one recruiting class of Texas A&M from 2020. Wow. I believe, or 2022, that could be a topic of a video coming your way very soon. Texas A&M's implosion. Will, how we doing today?
Doing good, Mark. Doing good. Always excited for Army Navy. It's the one game where I don't totally just look forward to the football. I look forward to all the ceremonies going on.
Yeah.
The exchanging of the prisoners between the schools, the fight songs at the end. It's really what makes Army Navy great. The football is great too, but just the whole atmosphere of the game. It's definitely something I want to go to eventually, but I know it's hard to get a ticket.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't mention this because a lot of people will tell me that I'm crazy and won't understand why I made this decision. But anyway, I was had the opportunity to go maybe about 3 years ago because the guy that was in charge of the audio for College Game Day at ESPN, he reported to me and he asked me if I wanted to go to Army Navy and hang out in the production truck and I could go for free and everything would be paved. And I just was busy and had other things going on. So I didn't take up that offer to go to Army Navy. I was in Philadelphia that year and I was within 3.5 hours, something like that. But anyway, that was my chance to go to Army Navy easily, just to have a credential, go to the game and enjoy it and take it in, not have to work. That would have been phenomenal, but I passed on that. So we'll have to make that happen at another time. But even the football I enjoy because it's just different. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people make fun of and have an issue with and think it's boring, the triple option. I actually start to get bored with watching. When I say I get bored, I love college football and love watching all the games, but there is a part of me that gets a little bit bored with watching everybody run basically the same offense, where I enjoy watching them run the triple option.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mark, this is the main reason I was calling in.
Yep.
Stanford hiring Sacramento State head coach Troy Taylor. Interesting hire. Really, the only other FCS to Power 5 coach I can remember is Chris Kleiman going from North Dakota State to Kansas State. I'm fascinated to see how this will work out at the farm, Mark. Very intriguing hire.
So I did not see that. I glanced at the
21 minutes ago, they got reported.
This happened a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I looked at the ESPN headlines. They still don't have it on their college football headlines.
It's from The Athletic, so I trust
working at Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one I will not have any evaluation on because I don't know anything about his work. We don't watch that level of football. I don't know. I'm assuming he was highly successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually watched last night. The FCS playoffs were on, and I was watching Sacramento State play Incarnate Word. And not much defense was played in that game, Mark. It was a 66-63 Incarnate Word win. So, but he is an offensive coach, which is important. So I'm sure he'll bring a exciting offense to Stanford, and hopefully they can get it back together. But it's going to be hard because the Pac-12, with their coaching hires, they're pretty much nailing all of them. So him and Kenny Dillingham are really the two that I'm not completely sold on yet.
They must have been extremely impressed with his interview and with his track record, because Jason Garrett was also up for the job. So you're looking at a guy that we can make all sorts of commentary about his stay at Dallas, but it wasn't a failure. It wasn't an overwhelming success, but he fielded playoff teams at Dallas, a lot of 8-8 teams, but a lot of playoff teams as well at Dallas. And for Stanford to bypass a longtime NFL head coach.
Okay. What scares me about Stanford is that maybe they just didn't want to pay Garrett. Maybe they just aren't committed to football as much as they should be. Yeah, and I was hoping they would take Garrett. I think his commentary on Notre Dame is very average at best. So,
yeah, well, you would know more about that than I. Yeah. I haven't paid much attention to Jason Garrett and what he's had to say about Notre Dame, but yes, he is on the broadcast. So you're going to lose Jason Garrett, or you had the potential of losing Jason Garrett as a Notre Dame. They always come up with a strange selection of commentators, color analysts, pregame, postgame, during the game for the Notre Dame broadcasts. I guess because that's the only game in town. It's the only college football game. It's just, it always strikes me as kind of strange. They're typically like otherwise not college football guys.
Mike Tirico and Tony Dungy were good. Never really liked the other combinations that they had. Flutie was always anti-Notre Dame. Drew Brees was just not great. I mean, it was his first time doing it, but every time when we were playing against Purdue, every play he said "we" when he was referring to Purdue. So I didn't like that. Mayock was all right. I didn't mind Mayock.
Honesty, though.
Yeah.
But you're right. He should take himself out of that role and be calling a football game, not saying, because he obviously has rooting interest, and we understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just hope they go back to Tirico and Dungy, because I enjoyed them out of all the new ones.
Yeah, Tirico's a professional through and through.
Yeah. Jack Collinsworth, no, he's a Notre Dame guy, but I just don't. He's not that good. But I mean, I guess I'll stick with him. I guess I don't think we have a choice with him. But
I saw him a couple games ago on the sideline. So he hosts the pregame, I'm guessing, and does the halftime. Okay.
Well, now he does play-by-play. Jack Collinsworth does.
Oh, he's doing the play-by-play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they let Al Michaels go to Amazon Prime, so Tirico's doing Sunday Night Football now.
Yes. So I saw a bit this is the most of Collinsworth I've seen maybe ever since I think he started on ESPN. I think he had an ESPN Sports Center run. I think I might have. He was on the sideline with, oh shoot, this might have been an NFL. Does he do the NFL? Does he?
I think he does do a bit of NFL.
Yeah, I don't think it was Notre Dame then. And I cannot get his dad out of my mind when I'm watching, when I'm looking at him, when I'm hearing him. He sounds like his dad. He looks like his dad.
Yeah. I never really liked his dad. That was the thing. That was a big problem.
Oh, see, I'm a Chris Collinsworth guy. I like Chris Collinsworth.
I think
he's really good. Yeah, I'm good with Chris Collinsworth. Absolutely. And he's on with Tirico now. Yes.
So yeah, definitely going to be intrigued. They did go 12-0 in the regular season before losing to Incarnate Word this year with Sacramento State.
Okay.
And they won 2 games in 3 of the previous 4 years before he took over at Sacramento State.
He did something right.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to see how he fits in with the rest of the Pac-12 coaches. And see, I mean, I'm not a big Justin Wilcox fan, so I think he can take up maybe at least win some of the Cal games soon in the next couple of years.
Yeah, we're going to have to take on as we typically do every offseason, a coach's rankings through the conferences. And then we got to throw your guy, Marcus Freeman, in there somewhere. Do the complete list. But yeah, the Pac-12, Justin Wilcox, I thought that was a good hire. And he had done tremendous work on the defensive side of the ball at his other stops. And it's always difficult, especially in college football. It's not like ranking NFL coaches where they have very comparable resources. And so you have to play that game of how much support is this guy being given at a place like Cal, and they're trying to compete with USC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just USC putting into what the USC puts into college football, what Oregon puts into college football, down to Stanford and Cal.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big gap.
So let me ask you this, Will. With Notre Dame, looking forward to this bowl game against South Carolina. So we will have no Michael Mayer, no Isaiah Foskey. Anybody else opting out for the Irish?
Drew Pine's gone.
Drew Pine's gone. What are they going to do at quarterback?
Tyler Buckner should be healthy.
Oh, okay.
So I'm fascinated to see how he does with the improved O-line, because the O-line improved drastically from when he got hurt to where it is now. So I'm really hoping that he can be at least a mid to high level Power 5 quarterback for the Irish.
Are you excited for this bowl game?
Mm-hmm. I think we can run the ball pretty well against the Gamecocks. And I think that should be able to open up the passing, and we can hopefully see some big games from Tyler Buckner. And I'm not sold on Spencer Rattler, so I think our defense should do pretty well.
I'm sold on his ability. I'm not necessarily sold on his game-to-game consistency, where his head is, his decision-making, all of that. That's hit or miss.
Yeah. I'm excited about the secondary because I think everyone's coming back. Almost everyone's coming back for next year for the secondary at Notre Dame. So what was once a big weakness, Todd Light was not a great coach. He's a great player for Notre Dame, wasn't a great coach. But since he's left, the secondary has gotten much better. So it's not elite, but I think it can get there with where the recruiting is at now. So, and one of our top two corners, Cam Hart, was out for the USC game, so that made that much worse than it would have been.
Yeah,
I'm not saying we would have won.
I can't say that I saw or really noticed much of Cam Hart this season, but he took off and stood out to me last season. I specifically remember
they said his confidence his head wasn't really in the right place at the beginning of the year. That's what Irish Breakdown said. And that he got better as the year went on. So, does the game kick off at 2, Mark?
Are you Eastern time?
Yes.
No, it's at 3:00.
Okay. So I'll watch the rest of this FCS game.
It is at 3:00 Eastern. Yes. Yes. Who's playing in the FCS right now?
Holy Cross just tied up South Dakota State 21-21.
Okay, South Dakota State of the Iowa 7-3 game, I believe.
Yep.
Okay.
They're the number 1 overall seed.
Okay.
Man, that was a painful game to watch.
I will give that a look.
I was morbidly watching it just to see if any team could get some offense going.
You checked out some of the Iowa game against South Dakota State?
I was watching it. I don't know. I was watching it. I was fascinated by how bad the offenses were. I just wanted to see how bad it was.
I hear you. I just can't imagine. That was so far off my radar at the time that I just kept seeing the score. And then, yeah, I had to dig into it after that because it's just unfathomable in this day and age to consider that an offense can go an entire game against an FCS opponent and not mount any offense. None. The field goal drive was 5 yards. Yeah. And we are still awaiting Brian Ferentz's firing.
What do you think about One Scoop John's theory?
Yeah.
Of
the whole Michigan contingent, Gaddis, all headed that way. I can buy the Eric All part of it almost for sure. I see that connection. I see Iowa's history of developing tight ends, of course, and Eric All, traveling to Iowa with his buddy there and making that decision, and it doesn't necessarily change my thought of the probability of that happening, with it not happening immediately. Because if you think back, people knew that Mario Williams would transfer along with Caleb Williams to USC, but he didn't do it for like a month. So he still, I think, checked out his other options. In terms of Josh Gaddis, well, he's going to have to be fired. And I don't know what Miami would be waiting for at this point, because they're not playing a bowl game. So I would think that they would have made that evaluation. Here we are now, a week after the season and 2 weeks after their season ended.
Yeah. Would you pull the trigger if you're Mario Cristobal, or would you be a little or give him another year at least?
Yeah, I think we as fans, media, I think we overestimate our ability to call a football game and to run an offense. And just because the offense did not work, I ask my Miami guys that on a regular basis. You know, how is this offense working? How do we know that it's not working? How do we know that it's not the players or the execution or the talent level? You know, they did have one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC coming back, and he was lost after 5 games and was never the same.
I don't know what happened. I thought Miami was going to be. I thought they were going to choke. I did think they were going to choke away the Coastal. I picked Pitt. That's not that much better of a pick, but I thought they would be a little better.
I was stupid and I picked Miami. I knew better. And the other 2 teams, the only 2 teams that I considered, Pitt and North Carolina. I went back and forth between those 3. I was all over the place with those 3. But I trusted that Mario Cristobal, with his track record at Oregon, I don't buy into this whole he has to tear it to the ground to rebuild. I don't see where that's happened elsewhere, unless you're going to Kansas or Colorado or Rutgers or somewhere like that.
Kind of Florida State, maybe. Kind of Florida State and Mike Norvell, or.
Well, that's kind of how it turned out. Yeah. And I'm not there. I can't evaluate the locker room and the buy-in and the effort level of the players and all of that. But he inherited a top 15 roster in the country. And we'll see how it goes the next couple of years. But rarely have we seen a coach, and I would challenge anyone to give us an example of a coach that took over a program that was at the place where Miami was, which wasn't elite or great or even good, but decent, solid, top 25 to 40. And they had this huge regression before they lifted them to. Usually the coach comes on the scene and he immediately upgrades the team, even if he's got to go with the other coach's players. And now in this day and age, you can do a Lincoln Riley and you can transform the roster in one off season.
Maybe, I guess maybe Kirk Ferentz. They were bad and then they got good, but they're not the same level of program.
I'd say they're better.
I guess as much of a blue blood. Like I said,
is Miami?
They're not. Well, I don't know.
I get your point.
They're good before I grew up. That's why
I understand your point.
Blue blood.
I understand your point. Miami's won 5 national championships. Yeah. Yes, their ceiling is much higher than Iowa's. I'd say Iowa's a better program than Miami and has been for 15 years. But yeah, I get your point. Kirk Ferentz took over a bad program and he went 1-10 his first year, 1999, and then the next year was bad, and then he had his best years right after that, and it's leveled off since then.
Brad Banks, that was his name, the quarterback.
Yes. Yeah, they finished in the top 10. Kirk Ferentz's 3rd, 4th, and 5th seasons.
Did you think that they're going to sustain that at all after the third season? Do you think that were you like, oh, you think he's got it down, or
Yeah.
did you think they were?
I don't know that I really processed it like that, made kind of projections. I wasn't doing then what I'm doing now, where I would have been thinking about that. But if you go back to the early 80s, you can see where Iowa can be a Big Ten contender year after year after year after year. That's what Hayden Fry did for the most part. So I thought, and he had such a reputation with all these recommendations from the likes of Nick Saban and the guys that he had worked with, Bill Belichick, as being this great coach. And I think he is. I just think some of his organizational choices and decisions get in his way. But yeah, he's a tremendous football coach. But I thought Iowa would be better over the long haul than they've been.
Would you say Wisconsin was more under Barry Alvarez and then Brett Bielema was more similar to what Hayden Fry did than what Kirk Ferentz did?
Yeah. Now Barry Alvarez did a remarkable job. He took over one of the worst programs in the Big Ten and said in his opening news conference that he was going to go to the Rose Bowl, and they did within 3 years, which was unthinkable at the time, Wisconsin playing in the Rose Bowl. And basically he built a program and put a template in place that has carried for 30 years now. Yes, they've been more successful than Iowa over the last 30 years.
I wonder how different it would be if Notre Dame could have gotten Barry Alvarez or Urban Meyer instead of Bob Davie and Ty Willingham.
Well, significantly different.
Yeah.
Yes, those guys would not have been going 7-5, 8-5.
Yeah.
But you got your guy now.
Yeah, we have our guy now. Let's see. What do you think has the higher possibility of an upset? TCU over Michigan or Ohio State over Georgia? I definitely think Ohio State over Georgia is more likely to happen than TCU.
That's actually a great question, because I believe Ohio State's a better team than TCU, but I also believe that Georgia is better than Michigan. And I have full confidence of Michigan showing up. I have full confidence of Georgia showing up and being exactly the team that I know that they are. Full confidence. I think they're together, they're focused, they're rock solid in every area. But Ohio State,
they've never put together a complete game all season.
Well, I understand your point. They were the only team that had all double-digit wins going into the Michigan game, the only team in the country. But Ohio State's a wild card to me. They are just a real wild card, because I don't know where they're if you check out, anybody that's listening, check out our Ohio State show from this past week on Wednesday, our live show with our 3 Ohio State writers. I thought that they did a remarkable job just talking about the uncertainty of where their confidence is, where their heads are at. A lot of things that I had brought up before that, but they did a great job with their in-depth knowledge of the whole situation there, that I don't know if they're going to flip on a switch and get their heads back in the game and see this as, this is our new life. This is a second chance. This is, we can erase everything and still accomplish our goal. Or if they were just beaten down from that Michigan game and are suffering a lack of confidence, and if half the players were checked out thinking they're not going to make the playoff, and so there's a week gap, a week and a day, there's 8 days between shutting down after the Michigan game and thinking I'm going to get ready for the NFL draft versus, oh, now we got a playoff to get ready for. I don't know. They're going to need to be laser focused and in it. I think they can beat Georgia. I know they can beat Georgia. I know that it's It's obviously possible. They're good enough to do it, but they have to be on their A game. And if Georgia's on their A game, then we're going to see a classic.
I know that Urban Meyer can get Ohio State to that. I don't know that Ryan Day can.
And that's a great point. And that's another thing we talked about, that Ryan Day in some ways seems like an NFL coach. And that's great for long-term success, but to reach a fever pitch, pinnacle, intensity, like one of our Ohio State writers said, I don't know that it's a great thing or a healthy thing all the time that if Urban Meyer walks around the corner that Ohio State players are like afraid, but that might be a good thing right now. Like they, in a sense, feared Urban Meyer, and he could raise their intense. There's a reason the guy was 14-3 in postseason play. And Ryan Day, other than the Clemson game a couple of years ago, that's was significant. So they did get that accomplished.
Well, that team didn't have a great
revenge game. What's that?
That team just didn't have a great offense that year.
What?
And they got in 2016.
Oh, I'm talking about Ryan Day beating Clemson.
Oh, okay.
As being okay. They had a target, they had a mission. They lost to Clemson controversially the year before, and they got it done under Ryan Day.
Do you think that there's any chance that if Ryan Day does eventually, after a couple years, things don't get better and they get rid of him, do you think there's any chance that Tom Herman could come back to Ohio State in like 3 or 4 years if Ryan Day eventually goes to the NFL or gets fired?
It would be hard for me to imagine that Tom Herman would get the head coaching job at Ohio State just off of having success at FAU. I would think that he would go somewhere else.
I feel like he had decent success at Texas, and that was a bad idea firing him.
So I somewhat agree with you because I was not on board with the Steve Sarkisian hire. Not at all. I don't understand hiring a guy who had 2 major jobs and he didn't improve the situation in either one. And it could be argued that both his predecessors and his successors were better at both jobs than him. How that earns him a job at Texas, I have no idea. And I'm with you. Tom Herman's tenure at Texas was obviously not any overwhelming success. It wasn't. But he was there, I think 2016 was his first year, 2020 his last. He got them.
I think it was 2017 was his first year, right?
2017? Okay.
Yeah.
So he had 4 seasons. So he walks in the door, takes over a team that went 5-7. He goes 8-5, wins a bowl game. Didn't lose a bowl game there.
That's impressive.
The next year,
give it credit for.
And one of them was a Sugar Bowl against Georgia.
I thought they had no shot.
Yeah, well, I was kind of taking into consideration Georgia's attitude at that point, so that didn't really surprise me. But that team beat Oklahoma, and they lost a close Big 12 championship game. It was a good game. So I thought they were going to take off from there. And I think they went 8-5, and they beat Utah in the Alamo Bowl. So that's not the end of the world, but they obviously didn't take off after that. And then it's difficult to fire a coach after that COVID year. And they lost all 3 of those games razor close.
And Iowa State won a New Year's Six Bowl that year.
Yeah, and they came within that close of beating Iowa State and being in Iowa State.
And that was the year that Oklahoma destroyed Florida, right?
Yeah.
With Dan Mullen not caring about the game.
Yeah. Dan Mullen's such a clown.
What a clown.
That is such not being, we hear the term being presidential, like in other platforms and so forth. That is totally not being big time head coach like. like making it displayed that I don't care, this isn't my team. You're basically betraying your players, saying players that you recruited and signed aren't your players. This isn't the real Florida team. Well, who are they? Why are they on campus? Why are they on your roster? You signed them. They're your team. And you can, what was obvious to me was you could completely compare what he was doing versus what Mac Brown was doing at exactly the same time. His 2 NFL running backs opted out. His 2 NFL receivers opted out. His best defensive player, Chaz Surratt, opted out. And he didn't complain. He didn't give up. He took his team down there. They played well. They were within a score with a minute left in the game against the top 5 Texas A&M team. And, they lost the game. And maybe they would have won the game with all their players. But I can credit the guy with preparing his team like he's paid to do, shutting his mouth, not making excuses, showing up, playing a really good game. And I almost give him more credit for losing a game like that than winning what would have been maybe another game and saying, yeah, that's that. People understand you had opt-outs, but you still showed up and played hard and represented your university. Not, you didn't act like a clown, make a bunch of excuses and then throw the towel in. And your team totally took on that vibe and didn't show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of another coach that ever did something that bad to his own team with like a game. I mean, I guess Rich Rod going to in the Pitt game, West Virginia fans say that Rich Rod in the 2007 backyard brawl, but that's not even close.
No. I don't really. If they're just pointing to Pitt being a marginal team, a 4-7 team going into that game and them losing the game, if that's all they're going by, well, good teams lose to bad teams all the time. I'm not just going to take it based on that. I don't think there are any other indicators that Rich Rod gave up on that team. Mm-hmm. They were playing for a national championship spot. That Dan Mullen season was one of the strangest years I've seen out of a coach, of up and downs, of highs and lows.
The shoe.
Yeah. Because if somebody would have told me at the beginning of the season, Dan Mullen's going to beat Georgia, win the East, give Alabama a hell of a game in the championship game, and Alabama's going to be the best team by far, and Florida's going to give them a really good game, be like, well, Dan Mullen had a remarkable year. No, he had the whole bowl debacle. He had, this ridiculous Darth Vader news conference thing. He showed up at halftime of the Missouri game and there was a riot and he really didn't diffuse that situation. He had the throwing of the shoe. That's not right. He obviously didn't do it.
Yeah.
He didn't take responsibility for it. He didn't take accountability. I remember watching his news conference. He's like, I didn't see it. And yeah. And then the bowl.
Imagine if
all that.
Imagine if he was coaching at Ohio State and Woody Hayes was still there, or if Bo was his AD. Imagine what they would have did to him in that meeting after the game.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Less miles in the clock. Yeah.
So Ralph is just letting us know, like, clownish things that coaches have done. Well, yeah, Les Miles couldn't manage a game.
I could have done it for him. How bad?
Absolutely.
It was.
Anyone who really knows football can add time in their head and knows situations. And I make this point every so often, and I think it applies right now to Jimbo Fisher and his offense. These guys have an ego that helps them ascend to the level that they achieve. That's great. That's part of their confidence, but it also gets in their way and it creates blind spots. And if you're Les Miles, there's no shame in admitting, I can't manage a game. I can't manage the time. I'm going to hire a dude and he's going to stand right next to me at the end of halves and games, and he's going to help me because that's not my forte. And if you're Jimbo Fisher, you hire a mastermind of an offensive coordinator. And Jimbo, you know what? If you win an SEC championship, go to the playoff at Texas A&M, nobody's going to care who runs the offense. You're still going to get patted on the back for being a great head coach. So get some help.
Same with Kelly not wanting to stop calling the plays. I mean, people were patting Kelly on the back in 2017, 2018, 2020, those seasons. But Chip Long and Tommy Rees were calling the plays. Like, people still give Kelly credit for those seasons.
Absolutely. You're the head coach. You get the blame. You get the credit, regardless of whether you think you can do everything or you need to relinquish the play calling. And that might be something that Ryan Day needs to look at. He's a great offensive mind, but maybe he needs some help since you're trying to be the head coach.
I just don't understand his run play calling. Like, he's such a good pass game caller, but like in that Northwestern game, I was just shaking my head, those run play calls. I'm like, you're such a great offensive mind. Why are you so good at one part of it and not at the other?
So for you, was it the actual inability to run the ball or the plays themselves?
A little bit of both, but I'm like, with that talent gap, you should be able to run the ball at will against Northwestern.
Yeah.
And also play. I mean, you don't even have to be that good of a play caller. You're playing Northwestern. Your guys should be able to lean on their guys and have success moving the ball down the field.
Well, I think that some people that fancy themselves as offensive gurus sometimes make it a little bit more complicated because to call basic plays doesn't really challenge or test them, and they want to show how much they know and how much they've drawn up, and they want to just highlight, all these exotic plays. And sometimes you see a play work and you wonder, why didn't we see this play again? You don't have to be that diverse if it's working. Yeah. If it's not working, yes, you want to fool the defense and keep them on their toes by being diverse. But as long as it's working, why didn't we see that play that just went for a 40-yard touchdown? Why not run it again? And then they stop it. They've shown that they've adjusted to it. Fine. But a lot of the times you can run the same play. And you're either just that, you've executed it that well, you have that much talent that you can just run it again and again and again, or at least it may take 2 or 3 times before they've made the proper, or then once they stop it, you run something off of it that again fools the defense because they've adjusted to that first play, but you can play something off of it to your advantage that they're not going to be prepared for.
Yeah, and if it's running a simple like run to the left, run to the right, and the other team can't stop it, it affects those players in their heads, like mentally. They're like, we know what's happening and we can't stop it. That's how you just break a team's will.
Folks who were making comments in the live chat that they'd like to call in, we've left the link a number of times. We will continue to do so. I apologize for not putting it in the description section, but I always forget to do that. There it is, folks.
Yeah, like Tommy Rees isn't elite play calling. I want him to be elite, but right now he's not. But he was just doing run to the left, run to the right, run down the middle against Clemson, and it was working because our O-line was having success against them.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that smart. Joe said he wanted to call in with me.
You then need to be smart when you're facing like talented teams, or for whatever reason the matchup doesn't work, then absolutely. That's why it confounds me what Iowa fails to do. They recruit at a certain level. They are elite on defense. Okay, nobody even expects them to come anywhere close to that on offense. But you would think that when they're playing South Dakota State or they're playing Nevada, you would think that you could be handed, Will, the playbook a half hour before the game and just randomly choose plays, and they would work better.
Mm-hmm. James Franklin needs it. Like, James Franklin can't adjust. That's one coach that just cannot adjust.
Yes.
It's just incredible. I'm like, it's just like a deer in headlights. Darrell doesn't think we'll beat South Carolina. All right, Darrell. Of course.
That's because they play in the SEC.
Those SEC sunglasses. Also, they beat Kentucky, right?
Yes, South Carolina beat Kentucky without Will Levis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely excited. That's what I'm excited about the bowl game, to see how much better Tyler Buckner will look with a competent offensive line, because they just weren't good the past year and I guess a half.
I think that's a good matchup. Of course, I would like to see all the best players out there, but you're missing two. So as it stands right now, those are the only two, though.
Yeah.
That have opted out. Okay. But it is basically your best offensive and defensive players.
Yeah. 2 out of the 3 All-Americans, with Joe Alt being the other All-American, and he's a sophomore offensive lineman.
South Carolina had their tight end Austin Stogner declare for the transfer portal, but besides that, I don't know that they have anyone opting out.
Well, the thing, Darrell, Andy's offense is going to be better because Tyler Buckner doesn't just stare at one player and try to throw to him. He's better at scanning the field and picking out other options, because Drew Pine just stared at Michael Mayer and tried to wait for him to get open. And sometimes he didn't get open, and that's why our pass game struggled. So South Carolina is going to have to worry about a bunch of receivers instead of just one.
I do give Drew Pine a lot of credit for his effort against USC, but there are obvious limitations there. He played as well as he could. They had 2 big turnovers in the game that would have made it very interesting had they not turned it over to see if they could have possibly pulled off the upset. But all you have to do is watch him, and you can see that he shouldn't be a starter at Notre Dame.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of another big. Oh, that one quarterback from Michigan in 2008. He didn't belong. He clearly didn't belong. What was his name?
Either that was Tate Forcier or Scott Sheridan.
Sheridan was bad. He wasn't the guy I was thinking of, though.
Not Tate Forcier?
Tate Forcier was 2009, mainly. Who was his name? Stephen Threed.
Oh, yeah. I remember him. Stephen Threed. Yeah, he was pretty bad.
Forcier wasn't terrible, but he wasn't that great.
Jason here says James Franklin gets a ton of heat, rightfully so, but he's basically doing the same as Joe Paterno did for 50 years outside of 86 and 94. Okay, I think you might want to Google James Franklin's record and Joe Paterno's record. They're not comparable. And first of all, you can't take 2 years out that they won national championships and then start making comparisons. And they also won a national championship in 1982. So, yeah, there is no, I'll do it right now. I'm going to tell you that Joe Paterno's winning percentage is significantly higher than James Franklin's winning percentage.
I mean, does Jason only remember the 1997 Michigan game? I mean, he did much better in most of the big games.
Oh, Joe Paterno, his postseason record was great.
Yeah.
So Joe Paterno took over in 1966. And also understand that Joe Paterno had 3 teams that went undefeated. No. Make that 4 teams that went undefeated that were not awarded national championships. Where are James Franklin's undefeated teams? Joe Paterno, starting in 1968, 11-0, won the Orange Bowl, finished number 2 in the country. 11-0, won the Orange Bowl, finished number 2 in the country. That's back-to-back seasons. 2 years later, they go 11-1, they win the Cotton Bowl, they finish number 5. Then they go 10-2, they lose the Sugar Bowl, they finish number 8. He's got Joe Paterno finished in the top 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 23 times in 41 seasons. So in the span of 41 years, he finishes in the top 10 23 times, and he goes 409 and 136. Do the math on that percentage. And again, his bowl record is outstanding. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jason, please. No, do not compare James Franklin and Joe Paterno.
He only remembers the Big Ten seasons. That's what he says.
Okay, well, yes. Then then you can qualify your statement as being you only remember the Big Ten seasons. Mm-hmm.
And I think you don't like this argument that I've told you before, Mark. But I think Penn State. Do you think Penn State would have had more success if they stayed independent, just like Notre Dame? Probably. Do you think they would have had more success because they only won one national championship? Well, he wasn't even awarded, but he only won one national championship when he was in the Big Ten, and then he had more success before he joined the Big Ten.
I would say that initially they would have had more success. They would have continued the success that they had already established as an independent. But I got to think in this day and age that they would have had to join a conference. I don't know that Penn State has the cachet or the sustainability of Notre Dame to have remained independent all the way to now. They might have been a good fit for the ACC. They could have dominated the ACC.
Them and Florida State.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech had some good years.
Yes, they did. Our guy, Joe Long, has attempted to jump on a number of times, so he must be having some technical issues. Everybody else, I've dropped the link in the chat a number of times. Mm-hmm. As we make our way to 3 Eastern, Army, Navy. Oh, here you go. Here's one for you, Will, from the real MVP.
Well, in 1993, they were robbed.
True.
And then the school started caring more about academics than football, which is their obligation. I mean, and they just didn't put much money into the team when Davey, Willingham, and then most of the Weiss era until Jack Swarbrick got there. And then they finally started putting the money back into the football team. And that was around the time that Kelly came in. And then Notre Dame came back to having that not great success, but being a top 15 program for sure.
Yeah. So DeReal, define national success, because we'll just explain to you the coach's progression. I'll just go straight to the metrics. If you go to a BCS national championship game, isn't that national success? I don't know what that is. If they're going to college football playoffs, 2018, 2020. So that's since 2012, we're talking about 11 football seasons and going to the playoffs / national championship game 3 times in 11 years. That to me is national success if you're going to the playoffs or a national championship game. If that's not national success, then you just need to state the question: why haven't they won a national championship game in 30 years? That's the question then. But I would agree, post Lou Holtz, before Brian Kelly, I think they had a couple spurts under Charlie Weiss, of course, in 2005, 6, that range. But other than that, it was a pretty dry spell from 95 to 12. So 17 years there. Here comes DeReal.
There he is.
Here we go. There he is. DeReal.
What's up, DeReal?
Hey, Mark. Hey, Will. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, man.
Doing pretty good.
That's good. Well, you know what I meant by that comment was Notre Dame to me is a team that is an almost team. They almost win the national title. They almost win a New Year's Six bowl game. They almost make the college football playoff. That's what they are. They're almost. They're on the cusp of greatness, but they're never great.
This is going to be good. So,
well, you know, with Marcus Freeman in the recruiting, the hope is we can get over that mark with the recruiting. We can have the same amount of talent that Alabama and Georgia have, so we can eventually get over the hump.
Yeah, but I guess the question is, how long do we need to wait for Notre Dame to get over the hump? For Marcus Freeman?
I'm hoping in the next 5 years with the talent.
If I recall, DeReal, you asked me a question in the offseason when Marcus Freeman was hired, and you said, what is the over-under? Are you going to say yes or no to, I believe your question was, is Marcus Freeman going to win a New Year's Six bowl game in the next 5 years? And it took me a minute because I didn't say this is a slam dunk either way, but I had to go no. That was my projection. Sorry, Will, but so we're one season in, so I got to make it through 4 more.
Well, I mean, Notre Dame will not make a New Year's Six bowl game if they keep losing to teams like Marshall and Stanford. So,
I mean, we're having growing pains.
I understand that, but my worry for Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman is he one of these coaches that only gets up for big games, and he's going to have letdowns. That's something I would be worried about if I was a Notre Dame fan.
I mean, I'm a little worried, but I feel like it really only happened this year, and then we'll get over that hump this next upcoming year.
Right, but the problem for Marcus Freeman is we have no track record of how he is as a head coach. So the only thing we have to judge him by is this year. So any worries or concerns has to be evolved around this year. So we can do the hypothetical, well, maybe if this, maybe if that, but we just don't know. And that's for any coach that's a first-time coach.
Room temperature fusion. Yeah, well, I think with Peyton Bowen and Charles Jagasaw and all those guys coming in, I think hopefully that their talent will at least win us over those games, even if we don't get up for them.
Do you think Notre Dame will eventually join a conference because the 5 seed, they're never going to be able to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4 seed going 4 in the 12-team playoff? So that's going to.
I mean, we should be able to beat up on the 12 seed most years. So
yeah. Oh, let me throw a hypothetical. Let's say you beat Ohio State this year. Notre Dame beat Ohio State, and they were the 4 seed. Notre Dame went 13-0, but they're the 5 seed. How would Notre Dame Nation feel about that?
Annoyed, but I think most fans, even though this sounds really stuck up, I feel like most fans would be okay with it as long as they get to stay independent. I think most fans would say they'd rather be independent in the 5 seed and not have the bye than be the 4 seed but stuck in a conference.
If Notre Dame goes to 5 consecutive playoffs, and let's say 3 of those years they're undefeated going into the playoff, and they never have success in the playoff, do you think some people may change their mind at that point?
Maybe some of the younger fans, but definitely not any of the boosters. The boosters, I think, are going to stick with independent as long as they possibly can.
Join the Big Ten.
Some fans like me, maybe not.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. It would be fun to just hop around the conferences, like 1 year in the SEC, like 2023 in the SEC, 2024 in the Big Ten.
Well, you've already abused the ACC for the last 10 years, so you can let that one go. That conference, I've got it out for the ACC. I'm sorry, ACC fans, your conference is a joke and has made stupid decisions and looks like a complete joke and embarrassment with their clownish moves and inferiority complex.
Yeah, to me, 2020 should have been the year that Notre Dame should have been effectively forced to go into the ACC. But for whatever reason, they threw them a lifeline and got basically nothing out of it. So I don't understand that thinking at all from the ACC. And if you're the ACC, I mean, has Notre Dame helped the ACC or hurt the ACC overall? Yeah, but you guys
help their money, hurt their football.
Yeah, but Notre Dame isn't a full-fledged member in the ACC. So how much of the money are they making from? Is the ACC making from Notre Dame?
Well, I think this is going to be my shot at it, is that the ACC is able to negotiate a better contract because they've got X number of games against Notre Dame. Therefore, the North Carolina versus A, B, or C game is going to get this rating, but North Carolina versus Notre Dame is going to get that rating. And as long as the ACC teams are at home, they're playing, those games on an ESPN platform, and it boosts their contract. Now, to what degree, I don't know, versus what you're talking about, and that's Notre Dame bashing their heads in every game and them losing every game except for the occasional Clemson game. And
right,
how much that hurts their brand. Yeah.
Right, because my thinking is what would be the amount of money Clemson would make from hypothetically making the playoffs this year versus losing to Notre Dame?
There you go. That too.
I don't know how much making the playoffs gets you in terms of money, but it's got to be substantial.
I also just think it's completely pathetic that a conference would, of course, allow themselves to be abused by a school that is going to join their conference in every other sport except for football, but they're going to play you in football 4 or 5 times a year. And also because they're better than 100% of your conference, or at least 95% of your conference, meaning one other than versus the 14, that they can do things like join your conference in 2020 and win 10 consecutive games against everybody. And fortunately for the ACC, Clemson bailed them out. And then this past season, I don't know how many people recognize this, but of course we've had this conversation, and guys like me recognize it, and our fan base here at the Voice of College Football, that Notre Dame effectively won the ACC by blasting both teams that appear in the conference championship game. And you continue to have a relationship with this school instead of having them come in and actually legitimately win the conference. Technically, you're going to just make your conference look abysmal by having your best teams in the conference lose to them and play for a conference championship. That the look of that is just beyond pathetic.
I might have to. So Pigskin Pete, right, Mark? I think you've had him on.
Absolutely.
So he did call into the Child Protective Services of Columbus when they beat Ohio State again to say that they're like Ohio State's daddy. I might have to do that to Charlotte, North Carolina, to say that we're the ACC's daddy if we beat Clemson again next year. I might have to do that.
Pigskin Pete didn't do that after the 2020 playoff game.
No, he did it right after the 2019 playoff.
Yeah. That game was a ripoff anyway, but then Ohio State killed them the next year. So, yeah. I think that's been put to rest.
Yeah, it's been put to rest, yeah.
I understand Clemson does own the all-time series, but let's not go into a Ohio State-Clemson comparison all time. I don't think any Clemson fans want that.
Yeah.
But that was a good gimmick on his part. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a great disdain I've noticed from the Ohio State versus Clemson fans.
Yeah.
So, because they're both elite teams that make the college football playoff a lot of the time, but
yeah, Clemson won 4 straight against Ohio State. Absolutely. They did.
Was that your soundbite, Drill MVP? Someone said, like, I hate Clemson fans. Was that you? I've heard of some.
No, that's not me that said that. Why would I dislike Clemson fans? I have no reason.
Okay, I thought it sounded like you. It was probably someone else.
There's no reason Kentucky fans don't like Clemson or any SEC. I don't understand why SEC fans would dislike Clemson.
As you guys know, I'll just interrupt here briefly. We don't allow any misinformation on the chat. We correct everyone because we are the bastion of knowledge and information here at the Voice of College Football. So we'll correct Clint there.
Well, we also actually won that game against Cal. You may say that the refs gave us that game, but we did beat Cal.
Is that the point he's making?
Okay. Yeah.
I thought maybe he was confusing Cal and Stanford.
Yeah, they almost lost to Cal, though. What was it, a 5-point game?
1 touchdown, right?
Yeah.
24-17.
So does that mean if we put Colorado and Notre Dame, it would be a 50-50 matchup because they've got that common opponent?
Could be.
Oh, my gosh. I would love to play Colorado again, at least a home and home like we did. Like we played them in 89 and 90. We should have won that game if it wasn't for that stupid clip.
Yeah, that was a bad call.
Yeah.
That was a farce of a national championship given to Colorado.
Georgia Tech. Do you think Georgia Tech deserved it, even though they played a weak schedule?
They went undefeated. I can't really argue there. I think Miami was the best team in the country.
But unfortunately, they did lose to Notre Dame.
Have either of you guys seen what the 12-team playoff would look like based on this year's rankings?
I don't recall exactly. We could certainly give that a look. We would have 2 interesting teams that received byes, of course, that didn't even get to the playoff this year in Utah and Clemson. Is it Utah? No. Your byes would go to Georgia, Michigan. Oh, yeah, because Kansas State beat TCU. Yeah, Clemson and Utah would get byes. And then I guess Ohio State's the 5.
TCU's the 5.
Oh, TCU's the 5. Absolutely. Yep. Ohio State's the 6.
Ralph, was the Colorado Hail Mary worse than Trouble with the Snap? I'm curious to see what you think which was worse. Because you said Colorado Hail Mary was worse than the loss to App State as a Michigan fan. The 2 worst losses for me were 2015 Stanford and 2011 Michigan were probably the 2 most painful. And 2014 Florida State. Those are probably the 3 worst as a Notre Dame fan for me. Mark, you said the worst was 1998 Michigan State, right? As Ohio State fan, worst loss.
Oh, boy. I would say any loss to Michigan is the worst. So that's in a separate category. Outside of Michigan losses, 98 to Michigan State, because that team was the best team in the country, I firmly believe, and should have played Tennessee in the BCS championship game. And the 15 game against Michigan State, because if you're just a college football fan, you would have wanted to see Ohio State and Alabama in a rematch in the playoff, for sure.
Darrell, what do you think of the whole Coach Cal, Coach Stoops beef?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think Coach Cal fundamentally is right, but I don't think it should have been said.
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty accurate.
And this is what I was talking. NIL is going to make the sport so lopsided, I think. You're going to have the haves and the have-nots. And I think Kentucky will be a have-not in the future. But, it is what it is. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm drawing up the playoff rankings as they stand right now and what this. I would love to be able to pull up some kind of graphic, but so hang on just a second. So I've got, do you have it in front of you, the reel?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. Let's so I've got 1 through 6. Who would be 7?
Alabama.
Okay. 8.
Tennessee.
9.
Kansas State.
10.
USC.
11.
Penn State.
And Tulane, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So we've got TCU Tulane as a 5-12 matchup.
Ooh, the hype in that game.
Ohio State, I have seen this because it struck me odd as Ohio State, Penn State having to play, but that's the way it works out. Then we've got Bama, USC, and Tennessee, Kansas State. So what points did you want to make about this field?
Can we please not have rematches in the first round?
Okay, so we would maybe switch, I don't know, Ohio State and Alabama maybe.
Yeah, or Penn State, USC.
Yeah, okay. So
and then, Alabama, you know what, Mark?
USC, yeah.
An all-SEC final looks pretty likely in this with Alabama and Georgia.
Okay, well, let's say we get your flip and Ohio State plays USC and Alabama plays Penn State. So, folks in the chat, play along here. We are implementing the 12-team college football playoff system into this season's standings, and we've got Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Clemson 3, Utah 4. Based on what you know of the format, don't respond that those teams aren't number 3 and number 4. You have to understand the conference champions with the highest rankings receive the byes. Okay, they receive the byes. TCU's 5, Ohio State 6, Bama 7, Tennessee 8, Kansas State 9, USC 10, Penn State 11, Tulane 12. We are switching out Ohio or USC and Penn State to eliminate rematches in the first round. So vote on these games, folks. Who's winning TCU and Tulane?
That's a good game.
Yeah, it might be. And if it is in fact a good game, then this is just playing into DeReal's argument that TCU doesn't belong and Tulane doesn't belong, because TCU should beat them like 48-14 if they're a legitimate college football national championship
Tulane's
contender.
only a 1.5-point underdog against USC.
Well, I thought that if you had your backup quarterback, you can't be a top 12 team. If you don't have your starting quarterback, that's what I thought I've been told by the Patreon poll. So USC shouldn't even be in the playoff because Caleb Williams is hurt and we haven't seen the backup quarterback, right?
Miller time as a Miller Moss, yeah. Well, they're very confident in Miller Moss. They're very confident.
Well, do we know? I just want the same standard.
We don't know.
I just want the same standard for Tennessee and USC. If one of them doesn't belong in the playoff because their quarterback's hurt, then I want the same treatment for the other teams. That's all I'm asking for is fairness.
It's an 8-4 vote in the chat. TCU 8-4. Okay. Are we going to let the chat maybe determine this? I would like to see this. So TCU defeats Tulane. Okay. Game number 2, we've got Ohio State, USC. Folks in the chat, we've got Ohio State and USC. Give USC Caleb Williams. Who wins that game?
I wish this game could be the Rose Bowl this year.
Yes, I don't.
How many points would Ohio State score in that game? I like Ralph Wolf's projection, 63-38. That would be poetic justice.
Yeah, yes, it would. We're at 3-zip, 3-1, 4-1.
USC, we're assuming Caleb Williams isn't healthy at 100%, right?
I'm saying he's healthy. I'm
Okay.
going to recount this again. Here we go. We're at 1, 2, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, 6-3, 7-3, 7-4, 7-5, 8-5, 9-5, 10-5, 11-5, 11-6, 12-6. All right. 12-6 Ohio State. Ohio State advances.
My gosh, they're going to be happy about that once I tell them that. But I'll tell them. But they weren't here.
That's right. Let them know that they were doubled up on the vote. Ohio State, according to Mike Rotunda, is going to win 88-23. Okay. Now we've got an Alabama Penn State game. Folks in the chat, Bama Penn State first round game in Tuscaloosa.
No chance.
You need to point that out as well. Ohio State's playing at home against USC. So in Tuscaloosa, we've got Bama, Penn State, folks. Who's winning that game? Doesn't seem like people are anxious to jump on this one. Penn State.
Jesus Christ, it says Penn.
Yes. Oh, hey. All right. 1-1, 1-2. We're counting. I'll go Alabama first. 2. I lost track here. Go back to the top. We got 0-1, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, 3-3, 4-3, 5-3, 6-3, 7-3, 7-4, 8-4, 8-5, 9-5, 10-5, 11-5, 11-5. Bama advances. 11-5. Then we've got Tennessee taking on Kansas State. This game at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. All right, the vote: Tennessee, Kansas State. Who wins first round playoff matchup, Tennessee and Kansas State? People are still voting on Bama and Penn State. We're done with that one. Here we go.
Is it with or without Hendon Hooker?
Hendon Hooker's playing. He's healthy. I don't want us evaluating a bunch of injuries. Just okay. All right, here we go. Any more votes on Tennessee and K-State?
A lot of K-State.
0-1, 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5. Okay, that's without. I'm going to pass that one up. 1-6, 1-7. You may not get your call here, DeReal. 1-8, 1-9, 1-10, 1-11, 1-12, 2-12, 3-12, 4-12, 4-13, 5-13, 6-13. The games at Tennessee, 7, 6-14, 6-15. Sorry, DeReal. Kansas State advances.
Oh, it's fine. Have you seen who Tennessee or Kansas State winner would play next?
Okay, where are we now? So TCU, Ohio State, Alabama, and Kansas State won. So what? Georgia, TCU, correct?
No, it'd be Georgia, Kansas State.
Oh, yeah. The 8-9 winner. Yes. All right, folks. Georgia, Kansas State playing a neutral site game. Georgia, Kansas State, neutral site. Who wins it?
Mark, do you think if you combine the best players for both of their teams, Tennessee and Kansas State, Georgia would still win?
Kansas State could help Tennessee's defense considerably. I think those two teams could beat Georgia. I don't know. It's an interesting process to go through. All right, I think we've got enough with Georgia here. I'm going to count it up just because I'm anal about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15, 1, 15, 2, 16, 17, 3, 18, 3, 18, 3, Georgia. Okay.
Shout out to Roger Dodger in the chat who says Tulane is greater than Georgia.
That's going to be his fill-in excuse for when USC loses to Tulane, I guess. All right. Our next game would be Michigan taking on the 6-10, right?
No, it would be the 7-10, so they would take on Alabama.
Alabama, right, folks. Bama, Michigan, everyone. Bama, Michigan, neutral site. Pick your site, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Atlanta, New Orleans, wherever it's going to be. Michigan, Bama. I got a lot of Michigan fans here. I don't necessarily know that they're here amongst our small crowd of 67, but they're out there.
Alabama won the poll against Penn State, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, got a lot of Michigan fans. All right, let's keep it rolling here, folks. Let's take some more votes here. Bama and Michigan.
Mostly Michigan.
All right, it is 1, 2, 3. 3-1, 3-2. Understand, folks, that I don't get your little emojis as being a vote. I just pass them on by. I just plain votes here. All right. 2-3, 3-1, 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, 7-2, 8-3, 8-4, 9-4, 10-4, 11-4, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16, 7. Michigan wins 22-5 over Bama. That's not necessarily fair. Again, a large Michigan contingent here at the Voice of College Football. We're trying to even that out. Need other fan bases in here. A little strong on the maize and blue.
Who would you pick if you had to pick between those two?
It's hard.
Oh no, did I freeze? Did I freeze or? Yeah, Mark froze. Drill? What the heck happened? Oh no. Can you guys hear me? No. Mark, we lost Mark. No. No. What happened? All right, we gotta wait for Mark to come back. Mark's back. Mark's back.
My internet was showing that there was no issues, and then StreamYard said that they were having issues. So we're back, everyone.
We're back.
Thank you for staying with us. Technical difficulties. To our next matchup. That is the Clemson-Ohio State game, correct, Ariel?
That is correct.
Ohio State and Clemson for another postseason matchup.
Should be a good one. Mark, let me ask you about the Alabama-Michigan matchup as people were voting. Who's more talented between Alabama and Michigan?
Alabama.
Who's got the better head coach, Alabama or Michigan? Who plays the harder schedule, Alabama or Michigan?
Alabama.
Who's got the better facilities, Alabama or Michigan?
No, I haven't taken a tour recently, so I can't answer that question.
Fair enough,
but I think this Alabama team is so undisciplined, Ariel. I just don't trust them in a big game.
If you don't trust Alabama in a big game, I don't know what to tell you.
Just not this year. Last year, yes. The year before, yes.
All right, folks. Ohio State and Clemson. Do we have enough votes here? It doesn't appear so. Ohio State, Clemson. We'll wait for some more votes. Even Jordan Bowman, all the respect in the world for this guy, says Ohio State, unfortunately. So we have some honest people out there. And I don't necessarily, with the condition of the Ohio State football team at this point, know that would be some kind of guaranteed win. I don't think so. But
I just think I don't trust Brandon Streeter. I don't trust that guy to make the right play call.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15, 1. 15-1 Ohio, 16-1. It doesn't matter at this point. 17-1 Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State wins. Now we've got a TCU Utah matchup.
Ooh, interesting matchup.
What do you guys think?
TCU.
This year, I would say TCU in overtime.
TCU, Utah, everyone. TCU and Utah are playing the second round matchup.
You know what I should have said? I should have said Florida.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, a shout out, by the way, to Mike Rotunda, who said the SEC isn't what it used to be. Move on, the rest of college football has. Yeah, I guess the rest of college football has just flown by the SEC.
Oh, man. It looks like Utah's got it.
So, folks, for anyone, I would ask you to always watch my videos, of course, self-promotion shamelessly here, but check out the conference rankings, because if you wanted to dispute the results on the field from this season, they're kind of difficult to dispute. All right. Let's count up TCU and Utah. We got TCU up 1-zip, 2-zip, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3, 3-4, 3-5, 4-5, 4-6, 4-7, 4-8, 4-9, 4-10, 5-10, 5-11, 6-11, 6-12, 6-13, 6-14, 6-15, 16, 7-16, 7-17, 8-17. Utah wins 8-18.
Mike says, how many Big Ten teams are in the playoffs? How many SEC?
The real? You with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, we'll see at the end of the bracket who's got how many teams. How about that?
Yeah, and let's also understand that it's also a byproduct of who you're playing in your conference. So, again, we can only truly evaluate these conferences based on how they play outside the conference. And the SEC was much better than the Big Ten this year. It's not even close or debatable. I wish it was, but it's not. So we just tell the truth here. All right, so we're down to 4, correct?
That's what I think.
So we've got a Georgia-Utah matchup, correct? Is that how the bracket would go from there?
Yeah.
Georgia-Utah, everyone.
I think Georgia-Ohio State's going to be a much better semifinal game than Georgia-Utah.
Well, Georgia beat Alabama in 2000. I mean, Utah beat Alabama in 2008. So there's a chance.
What does that have anything to do with right now?
Well, the coaching.
Yeah, Georgia has no good coach, apparently. Is that the implication?
Georgia does too, but so did Alabama and Nick Saban.
I don't see Utah as having this gigantic advantage in any position. You remember Georgia, Oregon?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what this game would probably be.
Different story. First time head coach.
I don't think the coach is going to make up 40 points.
You know, something we don't bring up to real when we talk about this whole Pac-12 SEC mess that really shouldn't even be talked about, is that I understand the whole argument that Will just made. Dan Lanning, first-year head coach, very first game's got to play that difficult of opponent. They play on the road, all that. And obviously they're a much better team today. They've worked things out, but they would still get whipped by Georgia. Billy Napier, I believe that was his first game at Florida, taking on a coach that's been around for 20 years at Utah, 15 years. And that doesn't get brought up, that Billy Napier was also first-time head coach at that university, first team going to the field for the first time. And they were able to win. Okay. Georgia and Utah, where does this start? I believe right there. Georgia, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14, 2. Willie's got Utah winning by 2 touchdowns, 14-2, 15, 16, 16, 3, I guess. It's not going to matter. Georgia's on 16-3. Okay. Georgia is moving on to the national championship game. Now we've got the epic Ohio State Michigan rematch. All right, everyone, step up.
Oh, here we go.
And give us your Ohio State Michigan vote. It was posted on Twitter the other day that despite what we saw 3 weeks ago, Ohio State would be a 3-point favorite.
Oh, no, Mark. We lost Mark again.
Really?
Oh, you're back. You're back. You're back. Okay. You're back.
Ohio State in Michigan, everyone. So, yeah, somebody posted, I believe it was Tony Gerdeman, posted the Vegas odds for all the possible matchups. Georgia would be a 15-point favorite against TCU. Ohio State would be like a 10-point favorite against them. And Michigan, they are a, 7 or 8-point favorite. And Georgia would be like a touchdown favorite against, they are against Ohio State, and something similar against Georgia, or maybe a little bit more. And Ohio State would be a 3-point favorite against Michigan still.
Were people angry when Florida and Florida State rematched for the national title?
Were they angry? Well,
were they angry on that's who they picked?
I'm trying to think if there was anybody else. See, Nebraska is the team that blew it that year. Nebraska was number 1. They played Texas, who had lost 5 games in the Big 12 championship game, and it was all lined up for Nebraska. They lost, and that re-entered Florida into the mix because they had lost to Florida State the last game of the season. Good question. I don't know that people were mad. They just thought it was kind of strange that 2 teams would rematch that quickly with those stakes. And, the end result is they split. Just like Bama and Georgia, they split, but the team that won. But the difference there is now we've got a structured system, much like the NFL, that says, okay, that was the SEC championship game. This is the national championship game. Bowl games were not playoff games. They were just another game. So just because you won a bowl game, people look back on it now and almost look at them as playoff games. Like, how could you lose a bowl game and be the national champion? Well, it's just another game. So when I reviewed all the national championship seasons, I certainly awarded some national championships to teams that lost bowl games. It's just another game. It's another game in the season. That wasn't a playoff game. So it was just kind of strange. And of course, Ohio State and Florida, in my eyes, should have split a national championship. All right. Okay. I'm going to have to add these up here. Or where do we start? We start, I guess, here. Michigan 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, 1, 8, 1, 9, 1, 9, 2, 9, 3, 10, 3, 10, 4, 10, 5, 10, 6, 10, 7, 11, 7, 12, 7, 13, 7, 14, 7, 15, 7. People don't repeat your vote. It's 14, 7. Sandra, Mark waiting for more Ohio State votes. No, I was just on a rant. 14-7. Oh, Michigan wins. So we've got a boring, predictable national championship game with a 12-team playoff of Georgia and Michigan. Sounds kind of like what we're probably going to see in a month.
Yeah. It may not have been what we wanted at the end, but the journey to get there was fun.
What journey was there other than basically chalk?
We saw Ohio State and USC play, and Alabama and Penn State, and TC. I know you want to see the TCU Tulane game.
I just want them to be put in bowl game.
I'd want to see all these games.
I wouldn't.
You don't want to see any of those games.
Other than Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Michigan, I don't think there'd be any competitive games outside of those two.
Okay.
See, I guess I'm different. I just like competitive football. I don't care as much about representation and all that.
Well, I care about the representation, and I also don't feel an obligation to these schools to make it competitive. That's their problem. That's their responsibility. If I'm in charge of college football, then I'm going to give you a reputable and a fair format, and it's up to the schools to build great football programs to play good football in my tournament.
Yeah, just have an SEC or Big Ten tournament. Just combine those two conferences, have them play. If you want to see good football, and that's it. You'll get, 95% of all the top 10 teams in the future going forward just by having those two conferences play?
Well, for as many eye rolls as I'm sure are out there, you have a good point in that we could only conjecture what the wins and losses would look like if, maybe what they should do some year, this would be, obviously we don't want this and so forth, but don't have the conferences play each other. Just have them go out and play all the other conferences. Like have Alabama's schedule be Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Clemson, Oklahoma. They do nothing but play teams in all other. Then we would have a great sample size. That would be phenomenal. And just make that the schedule. That would be interesting.
I think I would like to hear what people would say if the FCC were to dominate that schedule. Because all I've heard from the Pac-12 crowd is if Utah and Florida played in Utah, then the game would be different. So my thinking this whole time and this whole offseason is going to be, what if Florida beats Utah in Utah? What would the excuses be then?
Yeah, well, you've got the whole argument on your side, because even if they lose at Utah, you can say, well, they split, and Utah is the best team in the Pac-12, and Florida's the 10th or 11th best team in the SEC. So you can't lose at this point.
Well, it's just that the SEC is just the best conference and has been the best conference for 15, 20 years. I mean, it's just the way it is.
If we adopted that schedule that I just proposed, and then you had Bama's 12-0, Georgia's 12-0, Tennessee's 11-1, Ole Miss is 10-2, even Mississippi State's 10-2, and you had like this just line of teams with these. That would be yeah, that would certainly solve the argument right there, one way or the other. All right, Michigan, Georgia. Where's our first vote? I believe it's Ralph at 3130. We'll start there. 2-zip Michigan. 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, 5-3, 6-3. One scoop, John, you better get in on this. You see what we're doing here. 6-3 Michigan against Georgia. You better get your vote in. Could be decisive. I think everybody gave. We had more votes on the like Ohio State Clemson game than we do the national championship game. We've had more votes on every other game. This is surprising. We're only at 6-3. Any other votes coming in? Okay. 7-3, 7-4, 8-4, 9-4, 10-4. And please don't vote twice because I can't keep track of everybody that's voting. 10-4, 10-5, 11-5, 11-6, 12-6, 12-7, 12-8, 13-8, 14-8, 15-8, 15-9, 16-17, 18-9. Michigan, 20-9.
Can I ask about the potential bias in this voting process?
Oh, it's obvious. Yes, I get more video views on Michigan videos than anyone. The Michigan crowd, they love me.
Yeah, isn't one of the people in the committee room the Michigan athletic director?
Yeah, that just so because of their great integrity, they of course we all know whomever is connected to that particular team as an AD or whatever their role, they have to leave the room during that discussion. So this is the dumbest thing in the world. They leave the room, but when you come back in the room and you see Michigan with a 2 next, vacuum. Yeah.
Mark, we lost about 5 seconds of your rant.
Yeah,
well, my rant was basically, I understand from an integrity standpoint I understand what they're trying to do, and it gives a good perception and a good look. But if you have a decision to make and everyone involved has equal part, which they don't, because if anybody's ever been on a committee, there are people that are more dominant, less dominant, more outspoken, are better communicators, or just more knowledgeable. There are dominant voices in the room, and then there are less dominant voices in the room. So no committee's created equal. All 13 don't chime in equally unless there's a vote at the end, and I'm sure there is, but still some of them are going to impose their will more so than others. But if you have a connection to a team, you have to leave the room. And again, I understand their intent. That's the best they can do to remove that bias. But you still have to re-enter the room and continue the discussion that involves the team you're connected to, and you have to place them somewhere.
How about we just allow schools that aren't going to probably be in the top 25 to be on the committee board?
That's a thought right there. You know, Rutgers, Colorado, etc. Have them represent the entire thing. It's a good thought.
Well, it seems pretty obvious to me that you want as little suspicion on it, because there's a lot of suspicion that goes around with the whole, SEC bias of the playoff committee. I mean, you've got one of the guys is from the University of Wyoming, one's from the athletic director of NC State, one's the university, the athletic director of Colorado.
Uncle Rico doesn't want you as a committee member, Drill.
Who?
Uncle Rico thinks you would be too biased towards the SEC.
I probably would be, so I don't want to be a committee member. But me going through these committee members, my point is where's the SEC bias? The only one I see on the list is Mitch Barnhart, who is the AD of the University of Kentucky. So this whole idea of SEC bias is just lurking in the committee room makes absolutely no sense to me, based on the track record of these people. Like, why would the University of Colorado have it out for the SEC? Somebody needs to explain that to me. Or an associate professor from Montclair State University. What's this person's ties with the SEC that people are claiming that there is? Because if the committee's room's full of SEC bias, then there has to be people in the room going to vote in the SEC. And I don't see any of the connections there, but...
Do you think that they're worried that SEC boosters pay the voters?
I have never heard of that allegation. I don't understand why SEC, why they would need that other than just the results on the field is good enough. That's my thinking about it, is that the results on the field show why there's SEC bias. It's just that the SEC happens to be better than everybody else. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
At least
SEC
I think
bias started in 2006 with Florida being put ahead of Michigan, according to Ralph.
Well, they certainly show that they earned that. I don't know that they were placed in front of them. You had Michigan 11-1. You had Florida 12-1, who won the SEC championship, and Michigan did not win a conference championship. I don't know that that's placing them unfairly ahead of a team that did not win a conference championship that won one less game.
I like this comment from Mike Rotunda. Listen, all kidding aside, I lean Michigan and Big Ten, but come on, if you can't see the bias on TV and the polls with the SEC, then you're not being truthful. What clear example the SEC has benefited from?
Yeah, I really can't answer that. Some of the things that would come to mind would be the BCS championship game of 2011. I do not believe that there should have been two teams from the SEC playing in the national championship game that had already played, especially.
But didn't who was it? Oklahoma State lose?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost to Iowa State.
So they had the same record as Bama.
But if Oklahoma State would have beat Iowa State, then they would have been in.
Yeah.
So, and who played a harder schedule that year, Alabama or Oklahoma State?
Well, yeah, you're going to lean on who played the better schedule and who lost to the better team. Well, Alabama obviously lost to a much better team. They lost to LSU, who was number one. The counter argument is, if other teams don't get the opportunity in other conferences, then how do we know when Alabama and LSU already played? So they already determined who supposedly was the better team to gain access to the championship game. Why are you awarding another team from the same conference, from the same division, who doesn't win a conference title, access to the national championship game? Mm-hmm. So I think, Mike, so I will say this. The SEC's won the most national championships. I'm making the obvious statement. The SEC, to its credit, has won the games. They have won the playoff games, and before that, won the BCS championship games. And you can even go to the BCS bowl games and the New Year's Six bowl games, and the SEC has the best record. The SEC, on the counter argument, has been given the most opportunities. Now, they've earned those opportunities to an extent, but they're also given the benefit of the doubt. They are given the tiebreaker on any level that you can go year by year. They are always given the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and I'm reading some of the comments. One Scoop John said there can simultaneously be an SEC bias, even though SEC is the best conference. Both can exist. All I want is some examples of the SEC bias. Now, somebody said...
I gave you one.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But somebody said that this year, Texas A&M, Arkansas, top 8, Kentucky being in top 8 helps the SEC. Well, at that point in time, did they deserve to be those rankings? And
Texas
have they
A&M
fallen as a result of the quality of? Huh?
Well, A&M didn't deserve to be ranked in the top 10 when they were put there at preseason.
Well, based on what?
Well, based on what they did the year before. They went 8-4.
So I understand your point, and that obviously proved out. But if we look at the preseason top anything, we can point to all sorts of conferences that have teams that did not earn their spot. Like, I'll look at it right now. So yeah, Texas A&M at number 7. Miami was number 17. Well, they went 7-5 last year. Why are they number 17? USC went 4-8. Why were they number 15?
I mean, with USC, it makes sense since they upgraded their coaching and players. But A&M they did have a good freshman class coming in, but we didn't think that their freshmen would be All-Americans all of a sudden as soon as they hopped into College Station.
Mark, do you know if there was more SEC teams ranked at the beginning of the season or are currently ranked?
All right. I'm looking at, let me just to be completely accurate, because I just grabbed the first top 25 and it was the coaches poll. But so the AP in the preseason had Alabama 1, Georgia 3, Texas A&M 6, Arkansas 19, Kentucky 20, Ole Miss 21, 6 teams in the preseason top 25.
Well, I'm looking at the last list. Georgia's 1, Alabama's 5, Tennessee 6, LSU 17, South Carolina's 19, Mississippi State's 22.
Mississippi State should not be ranked in the top 25.
Why?
I mean,
I bet I've got Mississippi State ranked higher than they do.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like UTSA should be ranked ahead.
Oh,
I mean,
come on, Will. You're too smart for that.
I know. But,
Mississippi State would run Texas San Antonio off the field.
They're 7-5 though. Like
no. They're 8-4.
All right. See that point.
So this is what routinely happens, and I don't understand this thought. And DeReal and I have had this conversation before.
That was my anti-SEC bias coming out.
Take a Coastal Carolina, take a Liberty, take a UTSA, any team that's been a nice little story out of the Sun Belt or Conference USA or whatever. They kind of magically, if they're 5-0, they're not ranked. They're 5-1, the 6-1, 7-1, 8-1. They get to some magical place there, and they've defeated no one of consequence. Just a string of horrible teams, and suddenly they magically pop into the top 25. Once they reach about 8-1, 9-1, voters just think, okay, you just beat Georgia Southern last week by 8 points. We're going to now place you in the top 25. Based on what? They are not a top 25 team. They're not even a top 40 team. Like, these teams aren't that good. And when they play somebody with a pulse, they get killed.
I mean, that was definitely my anti-SEC bias. But
yeah, but they're probably going to be a playoff team in the future.
The team that Billy Napier had last year at Louisiana, really good team, won the Sun Belt Conference, 13-1. Who'd they lose to? They lost to Texas by 3 touchdowns. Texas was 5-7. That shows you and I can roll out 24 more examples of the difference between the group of 5 and the Power 5, except for some exceptions once in a while, a UCF one-off, a Cincinnati one-off. And those teams aren't top 5 teams. Those teams are like top 15 teams.
I do think that UTSA would have played Texas much closer at the end of the season, but that still shouldn't.
Yeah, that's not reality. That's speculation. Plus, we're talking about a 5-7 Texas team. They're not talking about an 8-4 Texas team.
Yeah, that's true.
They lost to Kansas. Like this just elevating group of 5 teams into the top 25 because they win games against horrible teams. I just don't get it.
Yeah, UTSA's only 2 losses were to Houston and Texas this year. Mississippi State's losses were to at LSU, at Kentucky, at Alabama, and to Georgia.
The Kentucky loss isn't great, but it's still better than the other losses that UTSA has.
Yeah. And UTSA did not defeat Ole Miss and Arkansas. All right. You guys about ready to wrap it up?
Mm-hmm.
Will, thanks for jumping on. Daryl, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mark.
Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. And our boys, Tony, Tim, and Rick are going to be here for a post-Heisman show. They are anticipating good news. So they wanted to do this. And obviously I said, heck yeah, go to it.
I'm going to come at you with a different angle on the group of 5, Mark. I'm going to try to challenge you a bit.
Okay, absolutely. Go study up.
Mark, imagine if Stetson Bennett wins the Heisman.
You know, I have to admit, our guy Porter came on last night or the other night with a Stetson Bennett argument that was pretty solid. And I'm not bashing on the group of 5. It's just reality. It is just reality.
Mark, who would you rather have, Jay Barker or Stetson Bennett?
We're taking a quarterback from 30 years ago and trying to make a comparison?
I've just heard that people say that they're similar.
No. People don't know what they're talking about. Stetson Bennett's a better quarterback than Jay Barker.
They're both Heisman finalists. That's why someone said that.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Mark, did Stetson Bennett beat Florida?
Yes.
And Florida beat Utah. And USC wasn't able to beat Utah twice.
I got to say that Porter brought this to light the other night. That, and I will admit to when I'm not on top of an argument, you know, I'm not always right. Some people accuse me of that. Somebody did on the internet the other day. But I still would not have invited Stetson Bennett as one of my top 4. But I don't think it's ludicrous that he was invited. He played his best in the biggest games. He did play great against LSU. He played great against Oregon and a few of the other key SEC games. They played Kentucky in a rainy, muddy day. It wasn't required of him to throw 4 touchdowns, but he played extremely well in the big games, the best opponents Georgia faced.
Yeah, shout out to Ralph Wolf, who says, who has Caleb beat? He lost his 2 biggest games.
Well, you could argue that the UCLA game was big. It's a rivalry, and it's also basically that was entry into the Pac-12 championship game. If they don't win that game, they don't go to the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, I think Caleb probably wins it, but
he'll win it.
Yeah,
if he doesn't, I will burst out laughing.
If Stetson Bennett does win it, you think my SEC homerism talk is loud now?
I don't really think C.J. Stroud should be there.
No.
Hendon Hooker should be there.
Michael Penix and Hendon Hooker should be there.
Yeah. there's a lot of people voting that don't know anything about college football.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Will, the real, thank you. We're going to be back tonight. Our guys, Tony, Tim, and Rick, with the Heisman post game here at the Voice of College Football. In the meantime, I've got a bunch of good content coming your way.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, as we speak, we've got a Penn State live show here at the Voice of College Football. So check that out with our guys, Tim and Marty from Black Shoe Diaries, talking Penn State football right now.